Hey everybody, welcome back to the Near Memo with Mike Blumenthal and me, Greg Sterling. Today we will be talking about an update on the state of suspensions with Google Business Profiles. We're also going to be talking about AI mode and local, and we're going to be delving into the controversial and dangerous waters of talking about Tesla and reviews and the sort of, I want to characterize it as the brand collapse of Tesla, but maybe that's not entirely fair. And we may sneak in a little bit of the DOJ, antitrust, and Google Chrome, depending on how time is going. So I also want to mention before we get started that the Near Memo is generously supported by the Transparency Company, askfortransparency.com. Go check it out. Also their report on the economic harm of review fraud, which is available on the site. So Mike, what's going on with suspensions?
So last week, I pointed out that in the forums, we had seen since January a dramatic increase in the forum posts on suspensions. So I reached out to a couple of SEOs to get their opinion on whether it was a function of increased number of suspensions or whether it was just the tremendous slowdown in support. Most of them seem to think that there was an increase in the number of suspensions, which ultimately leads to a slowdown in support because Google, as Brad Weatherall pointed out, is fairly resource constrained in their support, and they're, I believe, staffed to a fairly low level. So when a problem occurs and suspensions start going up, the time to respond to those goes way down from Google's stated time frame of 5 days to somewhere in the order of 3, even 4, maybe even 5 weeks for them to get back. Now, so with that extra knowledge, I went back in and started looking at these by the day over time. This chart shows you the daily variations in the forum. Starting in December, the numbers typically reflect early in the week, either Monday or Tuesday.
These are numbers of complaints?
These are numbers of forum posts from December through March 11th. And I thought at the end of last week that maybe Google had this under control and they were going to be declining.
Apparently not.
Apparently not, that the numbers are still increasing. We saw a big lift on Monday. It was sort of down just a little bit from the previous Mondays, but then Tuesday it was way up. So clearly this problem is still extant, and it speaks to anybody in the service business should be extra cautious dealing with their profile at the moment, not make any changes, because if you do and you are required to re-verify, it is extremely likely that the reinstatement could be very delayed if you get suspended.
So let's be very clear. When you say don't make any changes, what does that mean very specifically?
What that means don't change your hours, don't change your descriptions,
anything.
Don't touch anything. That's right. You just don't breathe on it. Leave it and let Google, one, figure out what's causing these extra explosion in suspensions, and two, for them to catch up with their backlog so they are back down to a week. And that at this point looks like that could be a month out. So don't touch anything. Category, description, hours, whatever you got, that's what you got. Leave them be.
Okay. And you anticipate any resolution of this in the near future?
Firstly, I don't know if Google will ever say anything. As Brad Weatherall points out, they typically don't. I anticipate that something is causing this increase. In other words, they changed something, some algorithmic change. They maybe don't even know what it is. Maybe they do, and they're trying to determine whether it's real or accurate and whether they need to dial it back. It's clear they haven't dialed it back yet, and we don't know when they will.
Yeah,
I will keep an eye on it to see.
That was one of the things that struck me about Brad's comments, both on the original podcast and then the office hours that we did a couple of weeks ago, is that Google often really doesn't understand what's going on with its own algorithm. That the algorithm is just algorithm is just operating sort of independently, autonomously, and Google is having to sort of figure out why things happened. And this was one of the, I think this is one of the uh, concerns that Amit Segal, I believe, was the head of search for a long time at Google. I may be mispronouncing his surname. He left under a little bit of a scandalous cloud, but he was a well regarded professionally, at least in terms of his knowledge of search and his tenure there. And I think he was the one that was saying that when Google adds too much automation to the algorithm, makes the algorithm too much of a black box, that the algorithm becomes more opaque and more complex. It's harder for the engineers to know what's going on with it. I think he said that a number of years ago. And this would seem to be evidence of that, although I don't know for sure.
I think you're right. I think that either it was a change implemented that they didn't think would have this much impact, or it's an algorithmic update that's happening with AI. The AI finds cause for concern. As we know, AI, in particularly in these sort of back room Google things, it's not that accurate. I mean, it's maybe accurate 80% of the time, or 85% of the time, or even 90% of the time, maybe even 95% of the time. But 5% of 250 million is still a really big number. And so we see the sort of detritus of that in the forums. These are people that struggled with support, didn't get anywhere, and now they're forced into the forums. Again, I want to reiterate to anybody in the service area businesses, hands off for the next month until you see this changing.
Yeah, I was at a small business workshop, digital marketing workshop yesterday in San Francisco. I got invited by the guy who was leading it at NSU, whom I've known for a long time. He just said, show up and do it with me, which was kind of unprepared for. Nonetheless, it was sort of an interesting experience. I used to do a lot of those. And what became clear to me in this forum context is the degree to which I had a lot of empathy for these small businesses. The whole process of Google verification. There were a number of questions about verification. I referred people to the Google product experts in the forum. I hope you'll appreciate that. People were just sort of beside themselves. I've tried to verify X number of times. I can't. I've got two profiles. We can't get Google to pay attention to us and merge them or delete one of them. Just again and again and again, there was this kind of thing. Meanwhile, they're all over social media. They're all using ChatGPT. And Google, ultimately, I think Google hurts itself by not having better support because people sort of turn away. They just get frustrated and they kind of give up.
Absolutely. I have befriended a product expert who has a business in India, and he does verifications, and the detail that he drives these businesses through is astounding, prepping them for the call or for the video verification, whichever it is, both of which, if you're not 100% prepared, you're going to get rejected. It seems totally irrational, but again, Google has standardized around certain types of businesses, and they have certain things they accept, and that's that.
Yeah, and they're just starting to, I think, over the last month, communicate why businesses the verification has failed.
Yes.
But they could certainly do a lot more to communicate to people what they need to do. I mean, in fairness to Google, they've done a number of communications around what you need or what kinds of data documentation to verify. But I think it's just not as well communicated as it could be. And there's just a lot of stumbling around.
Well, and a lot of small businesses run more loosely than Google has standardized around. Many small businesses use their personal name on things like leases and contracts and bills and internet bills. And if the small business name is different than the personal name, then Google's not going to accept that, even if it's a totally legitimate deductible bill that the IRS approves. Google doesn't accept it. So, I mean, there's this requirement of rigidity when they're scaling to 250 million that most small businesses don't fully get. Again, understandable. You have to be. So anyways.
Yeah. So before we move into AI mode for local, let's just talk very briefly about the Department of Justice and the antitrust case. The Google, when last we left our story, Google had been found liable for antitrust violations, and the DOJ had proposed a bunch of remedies, which included divestiture of Chrome and potentially Android on a contingent basis if the remedies failed to produce a more competitive environment, and some other stuff like the elimination of default search deals. So the final briefs were due. Google said, you don't need to do any of this stuff to us. We just can do these, kind of more modest changes and everything will be fine. And the DOJ, now under Trump, with substantial changes in personnel, basically, quote unquote, doubled down and reaffirmed the Biden DOJ remedial requests with some minor adjustments. There's complexity there. We won't go into it in detail, but chief among them was the sale of Chrome. So they preserved that and most of the major provisions. And my suspicion is that the judge is going to approve that. The district court, the federal judge, is going to approve that. And so there'll be an order for Google to sell Chrome, which will have some significant consequences. Google, of course, will appeal, and they won't be required to do anything during the appeal, and the appeal could go up to the Supreme Court, so it could take quite a long time. But just in the way that people were shocked by the liability finding, I think people are going to be semi-shocked when the judge says, yes, you got to get rid of Chrome and some of this other stuff too. So we'll see what happens, but that would have a pretty significant impact on search, I would think, because of the way in which Chrome is the largest browser. Google search is embedded in Chrome. All the data.
Google uses a lot of data from Chrome for ranking, time on site,
exactly.
And all the other things.
Exactly. I mean, they have Android and they have some other stuff, but it's not the same as Chrome. I mean, one of the stipulated or purported or hypothesized reasons motivating Chrome, which Sundar Pichai, I think, was the project lead on that at the time, was to get that data that they create. At the time, it was like, oh, we need to compete with Microsoft, and we need to have kind of this self-determination. But I think that one of the equally motivating factors was the desire to capture all this clickstream data and all this data on user behavior that has enabled them to really keep their dominance in search. So it would be quite a significant
When I
change.
look at Google's behaviors, they fall into two buckets: profit or data. Right, the data is viewed almost equally, or maybe even more importantly than profit. Yeah. Instrumental. Right. So if you see something that's free from Google, it's either data, or, it's data. I mean, it's not a question, right? So it's either data.
So I think we're going to get a decision in the next near term, month-ish. I think it was supposed to be originally before June, but we'll see.
And then we go on the 7-year wait for the appeals.
Exactly. Okay, so let me share my screen, and we're going to talk about some very interesting things here in AI mode. So you can see this screen. And what this is, so the query, I live in Oakland, California, just east of San Francisco. And the query is best fish tacos near me. And what this is here is an AI overview for local, which hasn't been seen, at least in my search activity, since SGE, Google SGE, where they had AI overviews, or what are now called AI overviews for everything. But this is really interesting because it's a map. You've got the AI overview links over here, and then you've got a kind of a big thumbnail here and 4 listings, and then there's this more about this particular business, allegedly the winner, and then you get a dive deeper in AI mode here, which is really interesting. So this is the first AI overview for local that I've seen, which suggests it may be a test, but it suggests we're going to start seeing AI overviews for local in the future. Do you want to say anything about this before I go into the AI mode?
I just did that search for best fish tacos Buffalo, and I did not get a pack at all. I just got the AI.
Oh, you got the AI overview.
I did, but I didn't even get a pack result of any sort below.
Yeah, so the pack is here. So let's look at the pack. So look at these businesses right here, the 4 that are allegedly the best. And here's the pack. It's totally different set of results. And then if we go into, so you ready for me to go into AI mode?
I am. Yeah, I was just seeing. I did again. Best fish tacos near me. I must have my VPN on. It thinks I'm in Armada, Vancouver, and it gave me generative AI overview, and then it's interesting.
Yeah, so that's it. It's very interesting. So The different result in the pack and the AI overview for this result. And then we go into dive deeper in AI mode. And it's
So the
different.
AI mode just is the new feature that they've rolled out
Yes.
in test. You have to sign up for.
Yes. It's Search Labs. You have to get on the wait list and then they give you access. But what's interesting here, what AI mode does is it runs the identical query again, but you get a totally different presentation of information and often very different results. Here, the results are different again versus the AI overview and the pack. So, I mean, these places may all have very good fish tacos for all I know, but they're all different. And if we were to do the Genesis search, or Gemini, sorry, not Genesis. Perhaps they should have called the product Genesis. Gemini search, it would be different again. Gemini 2.0 is one of the things behind the scenes with both the AI overviews and AI mode now. So I can go back to the original result and show that these are all different from.
And they're also different from what's on the right side in both cases. In other words, the right side doesn't necessarily even align with the left side.
Well, so in AI mode, I'm sorry for going back and forth here. In AI mode, right, it's not gonna, it's all of these link over to here.
No, but how? I don't see them there.
Well, so like if I were to do this or this, wait, let's see. This, oh, here's a link also here.
Okay, so that's to Google, right?
Yeah. So let me run it again and see what, I don't know if I can run it again. But in theory, at least all these links that appear here go to one of the links here, which can range from
So click on the first one, La Grana Fish, according to Yelp.
You want me to click on the Yelp link or
click
this?
on the Yelp. Let's just see what we get.
This on this?
Yeah.
It's going to go to Yelp.
Is it going to go to the listing or like a 10 best page?
It goes.
Click on the little icon to the right of it.
It goes to the. It goes to the profile. You're not seeing it.
I'm not seeing it. It's in a different window.
Yeah, it's in a different window, but it goes directly to the profile of the business on Yelp.
I see.
Yeah.
In a different window.
Yeah, and it for me on my computer, it opened a different window. So let's do another one quickly, and then we can talk about it. One that I did before that was kind of interesting is where can I buy an affordable mountain bike? Okay, so you can see my screen still, right? Yes. So this is kind of an e-commerce result, right? There are places here. It gives me local shops, but it's this product kind of page. These are the ads, product ads, to conventional ads, local links, forums, and presumably real-time inventory here. So this is a kind of the product display with the filters on the left. Now, if I click over into AI mode, it's very, very different in this. Runs the same query automatically. And what it shows me here is entirely local results and then some editorial content or, whatever, buying considerations.
Interestingly, this is something we talked about in the green room. The local results are much less. There's much less eye candy with them. There's no review ratings. There's no reviews. There's no rating stars. There's no photos. Much less visual.
Right. And the stuff over here on the right is a mix, is a sort of a hodgepodge. Here we have Yelp and Instagram. We've got, looks like a individual bike websites. We've got GBP, often GBP. We've got Reddit, and there are quite a lot of these links.
Wow, there's a lot of them over there.
Yeah. So this is quite variable. This right, link box, sources module, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I've seen as few as one source there, which we sort of just saw, and as many as like 20. So
I mean, in theory, one of the things, I don't think this is necessarily a preferable interface. I mean, it's cleaner and certainly causes less cognitive dissonance than the other one. one of the things that theoretically, though, this could do is a multi-stage sort of tell me about and show me where kind of query, or query that requires map utilization plus rating. So the
So I,
best something within 2 hour driving distance of here. In
so
theory,
I'm
this
asked,
can overcome sort of the brittleness of local search.
right. That's sort of the Gemini searches that you previously
Right,
talked about.
right.
So I'm going to refine or do a follow-up who has the best reviews and is closest to me, which is typically something you can't do on Google, traditional Google results, although they're trying to do that with the AI overviews. So it will refine based on the previous results. So this shows me now stars here, ratings, but it's not giving me anything visual. It's just giving me
It's
a sort
giving
of
you
a text.
distances, though, which is
Yeah,
useful.
yeah.
And what happens if you say, show these to me on a map?
Not showing on a map, interestingly. Gemini can produce a map. Gemini will produce a map, but this is not. I would imagine, oh, here's a link to a map, but it's not live. It's not, I'd have to cut and paste that. That's interesting. So it will link to a map, but it's not going to show a map. I would imagine they'll get a map in here eventually.
One
I
assumes
mean,
they will get it all squared away and will maximize the interface for profit or data,
well,
as
they've
you
already
noted.
said, yeah, Barry Schwartz reported, I think, I don't remember what the source was. It was maybe a direct Google source that they're going to add sponsored links in here pretty quickly. They're going to take, they're going to sort of waste no time to do this. I don't know. One of the interesting things to speculate about is, are people, oh, I mean, this is like different flavors for different audiences, but are they going to, let's go back to this result. Are people going to prefer the AI mode to the traditional Google results? I mean, this is a much more information rich page, even though it's very cluttered. There's much more information here, kind of at the highest level, than there was at the other one. Now, you can ask these refinement queries or dive down, drill down into some aspect of the result that you can't do here. But it'll be interesting to see how many people, what the behavior when more people get access to it is. I mean, I'm sure Google is just watching people use these things, but I like the AI interface because it's just sort of easier on the eyes, and I like the sort of follow-up functionality. But as you point out, it's not as visually rich, and
It's
I
also
don't know how.
non-determinative, right? I mean, these
Right.
local results are going to show up roughly the same query on the same results on the same query, whereas AI, not the case. And that's going to dramatically change marketing, search marketing, and search optimization.
What I mean, what we see, and it really varies from query to query. I mean, and we did this a little bit before we started recording. What we see is some degree of overlap. There's Gemini and AI mode are not the same. Gemini is behind the scenes, but they're not one to one. So if you do the same query on Gemini and the same one on same search on AI mode, you're not going to get identical results. So, what we see in an extreme case is now an AI overview for local, different results, like in the tacos query for the local pack, different results again in AI mode. And then if you were to do Gemini, which nobody really is doing local searches on Gemini right now, you would see something different with maybe some degree of overlap if you go into the Finder. And if you do the same query repeatedly in AI mode, you may see different results, or slightly different results, or quite different results. And this is all very dynamic right now, and so we can't make too many generalizations about this, but it's pretty interesting to see all of this. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. But that was a little taste of sort of the surprise of the AI overview in local was something we discovered when we were just sort of preparing for this discussion. So that was really interesting, and it suggests we're going to see more and more of those in local results going forward, and that's kind of a preview of what it might look like. All right, so Mike, let's, for our final discussion here, let's turn to the topic of Tesla and its brand reputation and what's happening.
So with Tesla and Elon Musk in the news so much lately, I was starting about a month ago, started looking at Tesla reviews because I was looking to see how many political reviews had accrued to the Tesla brand over the last several months. And I was finding a fair number of them, and some of them, most of them are quite blatant: criminal, deport now, get in, loser, we're crashing the economy. Nazi CEO saw it live, do not support Tesla, and by extension, Elon Musk due to his traitorous actions towards America.
So people clearly violating Google's terms in making these political statements.
Right. So I loaded in 130 some Tesla locations in the United States and Canada and started looking to see what I could find in that regard, both interesting wise in terms of this spate of political reviews, but also I was curious about the history of their reviews. And what I first saw was a pretty strong increase in volume of the reviews.
So this goes from January of 2016 to
it actually goes from March of 2015. It actually uses March as the cutoff date, so it's March of 2015 through March of 2016, March 2017, March 2018, etc. Okay. So it uses a March cutoff date, and it uses the year because I wanted to get the current quarter in.
Sure.
But for some reason, Excel could not label them as March. I have no idea why. Anyways, and what I saw was an increasing number of reviews and a decline for many years, starting from 2016, in ratings. And so I then loaded in Tesla's annual unit sales. And as you can see, the unit sales have gone up with the exception of last year where they were flat, and ratings had declined. When I did a correlation, it was almost an exact, it was a 1-to-1 correlation. It was 0.98 correlation between volume, unit sales, and rating declines before the last batch here, which is this last little bit, which is the last quarter, where this precipitous drop from 3.8 to 3.5 seems to be largely a result of him having antagonized half of his North American clientele.
So the way that I read this is that there isn't a direct relationship between review star ratings and sales.
Well, there is. Correct? It's a negative relationship. In other words, sales are going up and star ratings have gone down.
Yeah, I mean that's what I meant to express, that they're not directly correlated, meaning as ratings go down, they're not impacting Tesla sales.
Well, I don't think it has. We don't know that because last year we saw sales not go up. Now, it could be a million things.
There's a bunch of reasons for that.
But we have been seeing declining ratings with increased sales, which means that as he scaled production, and it appears that there's both car quality issues going on and service department issues and training issues going on. I think service department and training issues are probably the majority of these. It's where the rubber meets the road after the first 60 days, and people are annoyed when the service is subpar when you've spent 50, 60, 70, 80,000 on a vehicle.
So most of these negative reviews are not about Musk's politics or his behavior, but they're about service and quality issues. Is that a fair characterization?
Up until 2024, the decline was largely due to service and quality issues with the cars. I haven't yet broken out how much is which. And then subsequent to that is this antagonizing of half of their user base to the point where the bottom has fallen out. I mean, there's been reports literally daily about demonstrations at Tesla dealerships, about people selling used Teslas and not being able to get anything for them. In fact, there was one on NPR yesterday. Every major news source is talking about it. Sort of the let's bash Musk flavor of the moment is about these negative feelings about him and thus directly about Tesla. The question, though, is a bigger question. Is, clearly as a brand, they had an early mover advantage in terms of electrification, building a innovative vehicle that was broadly accepted
It was
as a
head of the market
solution
for sure.
in the market. And even though I don't see it personally as a solution to our problems of climate, it was accepted as one. And people
Well, for people
identified
who want to
with,
buy new car, for new people who want to buy new cars, at least this was a very desirable option. They liked the car and they liked the idea that there were no emissions.
and as he built the company out, he did not put as much attention into all of the supporting sort of requirements of service and support. And that's showing up. Now, the question is that plus the recent political actions, it would appear that the Trump lauding of the vehicle yesterday or the day before trying
That
to
boosted
sell
the
Tesla.
stock. That boosted the stock.
Yeah, and the question is whether it will boost sales. I mean, we don't have the sales numbers. But the bigger question is whether the brand is now permanently tarnished and this will continue to drop, or whether they can make a recovery. Now, you look at companies that have been tarnished in our society who have a very sort of individualistic approach to tarnishing these companies, right? They get big, they get bad. Microsoft got big, it got bad, it got tarnished, and now 20 years later, it has recovered its reputation.
Well, so
Walmart
that's
similarly
yeah.
got big, got tarnished, and put in a new CEO, and over the last 10 years has largely recovered its reputation. And the question is here, can this brand be salvaged?
Well, let me point out just real quickly before we discuss that Musk bought Twitter in April of 2022. So essentially 3 years ago. That appears kind of at the overlap. I mean, I don't know if that's precisely the point, but it's kind of in that area where the
So you think
reviews.
some of these decline maybe due to
Well, it
political?
may be entirely coincidental. It may be entirely coincidental, but it's just interesting to observe that that's kind of, it seems like that's the place where Twitter, Musk assumed control of Twitter, and there was sort of a crossover point. I would just observe that, if you looked at this quickly without doing any investigation, you would say, well, these reviews don't seem to have these negative reviews don't seem to have any impact on the brand, which speaks to the previous strength of Tesla as a brand. I mean, it had enormous brand recognition and strength. And so in these kinds of cases, it's kind of like reviews of McDonald's, right? It's sort of pointless to look at reviews of McDonald's because you either are going to go to McDonald's or not go to McDonald's, and you're
I don't
not
know.
going
I would suggest that the total flattening of sales between 2023 and 2025 does indicate
some
something's
impact.
going on with their product line and
Well,
with public acceptance here. So
right. So I mean, I would argue that Musk has largely destroyed that brand, and through his activities and his advocacy of certain unpopular views and his behavior in this new Doge context. I think that if Musk were
what, you don't think he's a patriot?
I would think that if Musk abdicated, you have to watch, if you haven't watched the SNL so-called cold open from a couple of weeks ago, where Mike Myers appears as Musk with a chainsaw
I did see
during
that one.
the Zelensky sort of meeting parody. It's very funny. It's very, very funny. What are you doing, Donald? What are you doing in my office? I'm the president. Just kidding, but maybe not. It's very, very funny. Anyway, I would say that if Musk were replaced tomorrow, I have too much to do with the government. I'm gonna make way for a new CEO. That the Tesla brand would recover very quickly, because he's this. Putting aside the service issue and the quality issues, which would have to be addressed, the brand perception is really all tied to his political behavior, I think. And that would change tomorrow. And I think there are a lot of institutional investors that feel the same way, but they are not agitating for his removal. The board seems to be very quiet or compliant. as the case may be. So I don't know what's going to happen.
Psychopaths make great CEOs.
There's the quote of the day. That perhaps
They
that could be
do. I mean, just look at Uber, look at WeWorks. I mean, these guys were psychopaths.
Well, you're talking about Travis, not the
Current one. Yes,
yeah,
the
right. If we look at the Microsoft analogy that you brought up, you had Steve Ballmer, who has kind of mellowed in his retirement somewhat, but was really throwing chairs and tantrums all the time, and really a kind of a brute in a certain way, bully, bombast. Now Satya Nadella is a very, very different guy, and he has not only sort of remade the company organizationally, but completely remade the image. That change and the corresponding cultural changes completely turned Microsoft into a good guy versus some of these other companies which are now regarded as bad guys.
And Doug McMillon did something very similar at Walmart. He increased employee salaries, did a number of things that has basically moved Walmart. In our area, Walmart now provides some of the best entry-level jobs that anybody can find. They're paying $18, $19, $20 an hour, where minimum wage in Pennsylvania, right over the border from you, is still $7.50 or something crazy, right?
Yeah. And if you're a regional manager at Walmart, you get stock participation, you can make high six-figure salaries. Some of those people are making $500,000-$600,000.
Even a store
a
manager
year.
makes
Over 100, approaching 200, I think.
And a
that
floor worker is making $20 an hour.
I'm waiting to hear about my Walmart application. So if I get a call, that's it.
Greg the greeter. Oh no,
well, no, I'm not going to be a greeter. I'm not going to be a greeter.
You're going to fill the freezers.
No, I'm talking about for store manager.
Okay, all right. Well, good luck with that.
Okay, all right. So whatever your politics, whatever you think about Elon Musk, this is a really interesting case study of the kind of collapse of a brand and how it's having or not having an impact on the bottom line. There's just never been anything quite so precipitous, I think, in memory, where CEO has gone so far off the rails and people have mounted a concerted boycott of the product. I mean, you've some of the outdoor ads in London and some of the other stuff that's going on. It's really amazing to see how quickly people are besmirching and criticizing the brand. The most famous one of these is it goes from 0 to 1939 in 3 seconds. So you've seen that poster.
I have not.
Yeah, it has a picture of Elon Musk doing his Nazi salute or his awkward gesture, and then him in a Tesla, and it says, "Don't buy a swastika." I mean, that is just brand death, So we'll see how it plays out over the next year. And with that, we bring to a close another exciting edition of the Near Memo, generously sponsored by the Transparency Company, askfortransparency.com. We will be back in the coming weeks with more guests. And thank you, as always, for listening. Please feel free to subscribe to All Access Near Media, which is our paid product, and that way you get access to office hours, which are increasingly interesting get-togethers where we talk about all kinds of things that are related to Google and search, and we will see you next time.